What's up? It's me, Don Tolliver. If I could describe the Bose Ultra Open earbuds, I think I would describe it as very seamless. It can definitely be something that you can style. It's like earring candy. Check out Bose.com for more.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
We are all addicted to this idea of the fairy tale. And in the fairy tale, like there's no like sliding into the DMs. There's no, OnlyFans. There's all of these other real world realities that then creep into real relationships that we have to account for as we're actually writing that story.
You probably think this story is about you. I'm Brittany Ard, and this story is mine.
Hi, I'm Damona Hoffman. I am a certified dating coach and the author of the new book, F the Fairytale, Rewrite the Dating Myths and Live Your Own Love Story.
I started listening to your audiobook. It's really interesting to me how you approach dating. My big thing is that I am very curious about the why of people. So I want to know how you got into becoming a dating coach.
I got into dating coaching quite by accident, as I think most dating coaches did have in the past. It was really from being in the position of being a frustrated dater that wasn't finding what I was looking for out in the wild. And now when I started online dating, it was back in the Wild West, Brittany. It was like, we're talking like infancy of Match.com. I was working as a casting director in television, and I was teaching classes at night for actors and how to market themselves and how to tell their story really through their pictures so that they could stand out to someone like me, to a casting director. And I started to notice the similarities when I finally discovered online dating and what I thought was like a treasure trove of undiscovered men at that time. I realized that I had to do that same thing that I was teaching actors to sort of cast myself into my own love story. So I initially, I wrote my dating profile, designed my photos, really thinking from a marketing perspective first, and ended up meeting my husband online. And then everybody started coming to me. And this was like 2005. People started coming to me saying, well, you met this great guy, but online dating doesn't really work. So I started writing dating profiles at that point. And after getting so many people on amazing first dates, that I realized I needed to get more skills to support people through the entire process of dating. Because as you know, Brittany, just meeting people that's just half the battle. It's what happens after.
I have been on probably 30 first dates this year. So
that's a good date rate.
Not a lot of second dates, a few, but not a lot. It's one of the things I like in your book, say yes. Like say yes to anything. And so when I am dating, it's very much out of my comfort zone. I don't just pick the same type of person. My age range is big, and it's like, just meet people and see where that connection is. And, still, I don't go on a lot of second dates, which I don't know that I want to be in a relationship right now. So it's more just to keep myself out there and comfortable with talking to people. I'm taking a break right now from dating, but the book, I love the title. F the Fairytale is so great. The very last line in my season 1 is that I don't know that I'm going to have the fairy tale because I'm not willing to sacrifice any part of me to get it. I went into my relationship with Kanan planning the fairy tale already. And that's where a lot of the problems came in.
Ooh. Okay. Well, let's begin with the beginning of where you started with the fairy tale. Our brains are really wired for stories. We saw this in season 1, and also I see this in my clients all the time. And I used to do this as well. We want to get to the end of the story before we're actually in in the midst of it. So it's like, I could tell you what the red flags are, but they're meaningless if you're blowing through the stop signs and the red lights and the flags and all of the things, because you're trying to make the story fit. You're getting to the ending and changing the plot, the meaning of the plot points along the way. So the red flags are really, there are some that are universal, and then there are many that are unique to you. And as you saw in After the Fairy Tale, I always begin my clients with mindset. And that means clarifying both the kind of relationship that you want, who you are, what you have to bring to the table. And your red flags really need to be generated based on that, based on what you specifically want. But of course, signs of deceit, things not matching, their words not matching their actions, or, as you experienced, stories starting to diverge when they tell the story again, or where they tell the story to someone else. Any kind of behavior where it seems like they are hiding something from you. We are all addicted to this idea of the fairy tale. And in the fairy tale, like there's no like sliding into the DMs. There's no, OnlyFans. There's all of these other real world realities that then creep into real relationships that we have to account for as we're actually writing that story.
It's so unique. And I really, really like the idea of going in with the mindset of the red flags have to be how they don't meet what I need. Not necessarily that, they have 4 baby mamas or, whatever it is, which is also a red flag. But, to be specific in the clarity of what it is that I'm looking for and what I want. And I haven't ever thought of it that way. And I really like framing it in that sense. You grew up in Michigan.
True.
And how did you're in LA? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. How did you end up in LA?
Bright lights, big city, I came here with a dream and with a story. I actually wanted to work as a casting director in television. And it's funny what happens to your story when you get more data points along the way. So I actually very quickly got into my dream job. I started at CBS when I was 21 years old as an assistant in the casting department. I achieved what I thought was my dream very quickly. And I also saw that the job that I thought it wasn't the job it actually was. Much like we see in relationships, right? That's how I came to Los Angeles. But I soon found that I really wanted to make an impact in a different way. So I still had this goal of working in television. I worked all the way up the chain in television to vice president of programming. And then I found after I had my daughter, I came back to this job that I had once loved, and it didn't feel the same. So I had to change my story at that point. And I had started writing dating profiles on the side the entire time, but I started to ask at that point, what if what I thought was the path that I was on was the path up until that point, and I created a new path. So I left my job and I started to invest more in thinking of writing the profiles, not just as like a side hustle, but actually as my business. I became certified as a life coach, and then specifically as a dating coach. And I really love this work. And like I've been doing my podcast, Dates and Mates, for 12 years. I've been coaching now unofficially for 18 years, officially for about 13 full time. And it's just, when you are on purpose, the work feels different. It doesn't feel like work. So I really feel like this is the path I'm supposed to be on right now.
My favorite thing is waking up and not feeling like I'm going to work, that I get to do what I love. And, for me, connecting with people is such a huge part of my life. And so it's why I did my podcast, was to make people feel less alone in kind of normal, I don't even like the word trauma, but stuff that happens in life, divorce and death and grief and, illness and bad relationships, and bringing it back to that human level so that we can have conversations about it. When you approach a new client, a new person, what do you do to get the right information out of them so that you can help them?
Love can only come out of love. So a lot of times when I first started doing this work, people are like, I don't understand. Like, what do you do? Are you like the millionaire matchmaker? I'm like, no, I am like the anti-millionaire matchmaker. My approach is to really get to the core of who somebody is and what they want. And I do it with humor and I do it with heart. So I'm not about like, let's change everything about you and let's take you down to the studs and rebuild you and give you a makeover. My tagline on my website is love as you are. So what happened for me when I was dating, I found that when I was chasing something, when I was chasing the fairy tale, when I wanted this picture perfect thing that I felt like everybody else had and I did not, when I stopped chasing that and instead just said, hey, this is who I am. I'm a biracial misfit from the Midwest with curly hair and freckles. And I'm short and I don't fit the mold of anything. Like I realize like that is just me. That is who I am. And instead I'm going to lean into that and let that be the thing that attracts the right person to me. So that is really part of my core philosophy with any client, is that you are lovable as you are. We might need to change the process. We might need to change your goal for what you're looking for. And then we get really crystal clear on what you're looking for. Because a lot of times when I start with a client, I say, okay, what are you looking for? Or I'll look at their dating profile and what their preferences are. And they'll either tell me, I'll know it when I see it, or they give me a list a mile long of all of these qualities that ultimately do not have any bearing on long-term compatibility. It's like, oh, well, he's got to be 6 feet tall or taller. He needs to make as much money as I make or more. He needs to have this level of education. And it's like that you've told me nothing about who this person is actually. So we, through different exercises, we get underneath that and really get to the core of who are you and what do you want and what do you need in a relationship.
What are the core values you have? Because that's what you should be trying to find compatibility with. Is that?
Absolutely. So in F the Fairy Tale, I found I've had these 4 pillars of long-term compatibility for a long time with my clients. And a lot of times I start with dating coaching, but I end up coaching into relationships. And so I was like, I need to really clarify what are the common factors that lead to that long-term compatibility. And as I was identifying these 4 big myths that the book is really built around, the myths that we buy into about what love is supposed to look like, I found that the myths were really perfectly aligned with these pillars. And so when we're starting with the mindset, the first thing that I actually do is figure out what are your relationship goals? Because a lot of times we're afraid to say that, like, well, I want to have a family, or I don't want to have a family, or I would like to travel the world, or I would like to be non-monogamous, like whatever it is. And I approach all my clients without judgment. What you want is what you want. And stuffing that down or trying to make what you want fit what the other person wants will only lead to heartbreak. So we really get into the goals first. And then the second pillar is looking at those values and the way that you live your life. And I find that a lot of times that will show up. People are like, how do I know my values? How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? That'll tell you right off the bat.
I want to take a minute and talk about hormone harmony. It isn't just for menopause, even though I was thrown into that last year. Finding a product that helps regulate my symptoms has been so crucial. Whether it's hot flashes, night sweats, or those racing thoughts and low moods, I've been able to use Hormone Harmony to help me feel like myself again. This isn't just a product for somebody that's going through menopause. It can help you at any stage in your life to help maintain optimal hormone levels. I also love Happy Mammoth's Complete Gut Repair. With the complete gut repair, when I'm traveling, I can make sure that I continue to feel like myself, even with the time zone changes and dysregulation to my sleep. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com using the code YouProbably at checkout. That's happymammoth.com with the code YouProbably.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying, just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay, things people love.
'Tis the season to share the joy with the Instax Mini 40 Instant Camera. With a classic design, you can capture each and every festive moment and print them out on the spot. Make this holiday season unforgettable and gift the Instax Mini 40 Instant Camera. Don't just take, give. Visit instaxus.com to shop.
I tend to date younger men, not really on purpose, but they seem to.
Hey, you got it.
You
got it. Flaunt it, Brittany.
They seem to be the ones lining up. But one of the biggest issues that I have is a lot of them want kids. And I am the mother of 6 kids. I am done having children physically. I had a hysterectomy last year, so I physically can't. 2 of my boys are adopted, so not really opposed to that. But it always starts off so great. And then once we get to the kid conversation, they're like, oh, I would love to have kids. And it's like, I'm not willing to start over again raising children. And it is really hard. I dated someone over the summer who we were highly compatible on so many different levels on our core, but he really wants children. And he was like, after meeting you, I want children more. And it's like that.
The baby factory's closed.
That's something. And so we parted ways as friends because I'm not willing to sacrifice that. He's not willing to give that up. And we were both really sad about it. But I said, I'm really proud of us that neither of us is willing to give up a part of ourselves to fit in to this relationship for this moment. And about a year, it was after Canaan, I used to get so stressed out about responding to text messages. Like, how are they going to take it? What am I going to say? And now the first thing that pops into my head is what I text, because that's how I feel about it. And if they don't like it or it hits wrong, we're probably not compatible. And not forcing this has been such a big lesson for me and has helped saved me so much wasted time in talking to people that I'm not compatible with.
Yeah. And you get that emotional investment too, if you're not having those conversations early on, because, we all have fear. And especially in dating and moving into relationships and bearing your soul and your deepest wants and needs to someone, that's a very vulnerable place to be. And so we are afraid to be our whole self. We're afraid to speak what we actually want because we're afraid if we say that and then they reject us, that's going to really hurt. But I try to reframe this for my clients and listeners that it's not a rejection of you. It's a rejection of the story that you're writing, right? And it's just not an alignment for them. And the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and for them at that point is to let them go. And I know when I say that, I know how hard that can be, which is why we want to front load some of those conversations just to make sure like the core. I tell my clients, you want 3 must-haves and 1 deal breaker. People will come to me with like 20 list long deal breaker sheet. I'm like, okay, we can always find a reason to say no. I'm looking for reasons to say yes. And you're usually not going to get everything on your list. But if we really narrow it down to like, what are the 3 most important things? And you check those off the list first, then it's like, okay, then you're not dealing with a red light or a red flag. You're dealing with maybe a yellow light. Proceed with caution, because that is sort of the process. Like a lot of people will write into my show and say, well, how do you know? How do you know if it's the person? And it's like, you're not going to know on date 1 or 2. Like what you knew about Kanan on date 1, 2, or 3, very different than what you learned what you knew 5 months later. And with the must-haves and deal breakers, I really also try to get into how you want to feel. So I think if I were to go back and rewrite my must-haves and my deal breaker, I would say must be intellectually stimulating. At the time when I was dating, because a lot of these philosophies I've developed in my years of working with clients, like I wish I had me when I was dating. I would say like needs to be smart. But now as a coach, if somebody said needs to be smart, I would really drill down on what does that mean to you? Like I need to be intellectually stimulated in conversation specifically. I live in the world of words. So I would need that. I would need somebody that really feels, that makes me feel safe. And also somebody who honors the uniqueness in me and sees what makes me different. Like those were my must-haves. And like I never had, like when my husband and I met, he was broke. He made half as much money as I did. I knew I was not looking for somebody who was a provider. I was looking for someone who I wanted to have somebody who would co-parent and who would not have any ego. I also wanted to date a feminist. I was not interested in anyone opening doors or doing any of that chivalry stuff. I was like, I need somebody who's going to not have an ego about the fact that I'm going to be working and you need to pick up the kids from school sometimes. And that is the relationship that I have built. As far as deal breakers, I hate yelling. Like my parents, now divorced, were constantly screaming at each other. And there was a lot of love in my home, but there was just a lot of fire and passion. And I didn't want any of that. And my husband doesn't raise his voice in the least. So some of that experience is going through the dating process with a mindset of discovery, that you're going to get more information and some of it's going to fit into the story and some of it is not. And what can you live with and what is actually a deal breaker for you?
When you're dating with trauma, how do you have conversations about that with a person that you're interested in? Obviously not on the first date. You're not going to dive in, but the slow love concept, like how do you make sure your values are aligned when there is that underlying trauma or even bad experiences in dating that sometimes, put up those walls?
This is a tricky one because it is different for each person and, the specific story, kind of trauma, relationship history, that all is unique to each individual. But I say really use your body as a compass, first of all. Like, especially if you have trauma, you're going to recognize a reaction if a feeling is repeated, if somebody steps on your boundaries, if that trauma is triggered, and to really pay attention to that, because our attachment to the story will sometimes cause us to blow through that and to say like, oh, well, that's just my old stuff. It's like your old stuff is speaking to you for a reason. And again, treat that as a yellow light. And I'm not a therapist. I'm specifically a dating coach. A lot of my clients work with therapists concurrently. I think it's a really good idea if you have trauma to check in throughout that relationship development process with a trusted therapist, so that you can make sense of because sometimes we'll get that feeling. Your compass will go off and you're like, okay, but I don't know what this means. And that's where it's helpful to have somebody to unpack that.
Yes, I talk to my therapist a lot, and a lot of my show was, why did I end up with Kanan? Like, what happened in my life that I hadn't addressed, and how did I succumb to being love bombed in that way so easily, and where did I need to give myself that self validation so it's not something I was looking for from somebody else. And I've learned so much about myself through that whole process and through therapy. In F the Fairytale, you talk about the myth behind chemistry, which I think is so interesting because every movie, every book, every romance novel is, you see a person and you just know, and you have those feelings, and then you build that story around that initial connection, but that's not sustainable.
That, my friend, is the fairy tale.
Yeah.
That is the big lie. And it's not that you don't want to feel something when you meet that person, but I like to think of it more as a curiosity than a chemistry. Because a lot of times, especially when you feel that immediate lightning bolts, where you lose track of time and you can't think of anything else afterwards, and you feel weak in the knees, a lot of times that actually is our body signaling to us, pump the brakes, hold on, danger. Like, I noticed something here that we're not consciously aware of because it's matching the story. It's matching the fairy tale in our minds. And so we're like, oh, so this is good. And whenever people tell me, like, I had a great first date, I spent 6 hours and then I went to his place and then we had drinks. And then I'm like, oh, you didn't have a great first date, because true chemistry develops over time. It's in those small moments. It's in the interactions that you have. It's in the in-between spaces of like, oh, I met that person and now I'm thinking about that person. I can't wait to see them again. And then we have another date and then we have more anticipation. And I say this from the other side. I've been now with my husband for 21 years. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but for 21 years, I've been with my husband. And the chemistry that I feel towards him is so much deeper than the chemistry when we met, because I know him on a different level. I trust him on a different level. I can relax into that feeling of being in partnership. That's worth a million butterflies. But I just have to get people to that point.
I would imagine it's hard to get people to that point. I want to know how I feel about me when I'm with somebody, not how do they make me feel, but how do I feel about myself when I'm with them? Do they bring out the qualities that I want in myself? Or am I trying to pretend like I'm somebody else? Do I feel like they're valuing my time and who I am as a person, or just trying to boost themselves up? It's that making sure that I'm falling in love with myself because of how they see me, and not falling in love with them because I want them to see me in a certain way.
100%. And that is also something that I talk about in the book, that we want to get into the feeling of being with someone and that interoception of like both, I was saying a minute ago, being in your body, like what sensations physically are coming up for me, but also emotionally, how does this person make me feel? And this is why in the book I also talk about slow love. It's a lot easier to understand those signals and to be able to read them when you are taking it slower. Because when we get caught up in chemistry, it's a lot of the momentum that starts driving the dates, and that's where we're blowing through the red flags, because we're going so fast. We're trying to make it fit, and we're not checking in with like, wait, do I feel safe with this person? Do I feel like I am being my whole self? Do I feel heard? Are they listening to me? Are they being patient with me? Am I being patient with them? Like, I've had other relationships where the person like really brought out the worst in me. And it took meeting somebody that was, had a secure attachment to notice I was different, like you were just saying. I wasn't like gaslighting or starting fights or looking for problems. It was just like, oh, this is just how it is. And it feels weird when it first happens too, because then you're like, okay, well, when's the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah. Why am I not anxious right now? Like, what's happening?
Yeah. When you're used to chaos, secure and calm feels like people will always write into my show saying like, well, I'm with somebody that they have my 3 must-haves. They don't have my deal breaker. They seem to be, secure. They're mature. They're a good communicator. But like, I don't know. Am I settling? Is this boring? And I'm like, no, like this is life. This is called life. Are you excited every day of your life?
We have all of these things that come up in life that are going to make it exciting or terrifying, or that you have to get through together. Is that person going to be able to be there for you in that moment and it not be this dramatic, constant thing?
I had such a great conversation with Damona Hoffman. We had to put it into 2 episodes, and part 2 will come out next week anywhere you get your podcast. Or you can hop on my Patreon, and it's available ad-free anytime.
You can support the show by joining us on Patreon. Episodes are available early and ad-free. That's patreon.com/Brittani Ard, or find a link below in the show notes. Our executive producer is Brittani Ard. Our senior producer and editor is Sydney Gladue. Sound engineering by Sean Simmons. Graphic design by Nigella Sharma. Opening theme by Youth Star and Miscellaneous. You probably think The Stories About You is a production of BDE Unlimited Productions. You can follow Britt for updates at Brittani.ard on all social media platforms. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. And also, give us a rate or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.